Hey everyone, welcome to Rebloom, the podcast where we explore the power of change, rediscovery, and living with intention.
That's right. We're your hosts, Lori and Jamie, two friends who really love a good story about transformation.
In each podcast, we're going to chat with inspiring guests who've made bold pivots in their lives or careers. They've let go of what no longer served them to embrace something more authentic, joyful, and true to who they really are.
And the best part, many of them reconnect with passions or dreams they discovered as kids. It's about finding the seeds planted long ago and letting them bloom again.
So if you're ready for real conversations about reinvention, purpose, and following your creative heart, you're in the right place.
Let's dive in and see what it takes to rebloom.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rebloom. Hi, Lori. How are you?
I'm good. I've been super busy. I know both of us have been traveling and teaching and just doing all the fun things.
Oh my gosh, I just got back from New York City. I was teaching there. I love teaching. It's so much fun. And where have you been off to?
Oh my gosh, where haven't I been? My friends kid me. They're like, "Are you actually home now?" I've been out of the country in Connecticut, in Richmond, all around.
And, you know, this has been the best part of, I think, this chapter for us as we've started to rebloom. I have been an instructor at a local university for over 18 years, but now being able to take our show on the road a little bit is so fun. And that's why I'm so excited we get to talk to our next guest. Welcome, Caroline Simas. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Well, I get the pleasure of doing a little intro for my friend Caroline, who I've known for a while now, actually. We both shared the same licensing agent, and that's how we met. But Caroline is someone that I've always admired. We have similar approaches to art, very colorful, very joyful. In fact, a lot of the things that we seem to do run very parallel in a really weird way. So she started a brand called Multiple Blessings, and I know she's a woman of faith, and she brings a lot of that into her work and her life. She lives it. And then she's gone on to now she's teaching and painting and mentoring and doing all the things. So I can't wait to hear about her background, like from day one, being a teacher to where she is now. So welcome.
You guys are so
Welcome,
sweet to have
Caroline.
me. Thank you. Thank you. I adore both of you.
Well, we adore you. And if you can't already tell, Caroline is from the South. She's from Charlotte.
Hey, y'all.
And hey, y'all. I have a Southern husband. So Caroline, did you start out as an artist? How did your career start?
That's a great question. So many people ask me this question, and I got it last night at an event. When did you become an artist? And I say age 6, or actually as soon as I could hold a crayon. So that's when I became an artist.
I love it.
But I've just loved it my whole life. And my parents did a wonderful job of immersing me into creativity at a young age. So I was surrounded by it and just grew up creating. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, we are parallel. I started around age 7.
Amen.
Well,
I love that.
it's so freaking weird how many parallels we have.
It really is.
I know, but you went towards teaching for a while.
Did.
Am I right?
I was an elementary education and early childhood education major at the College of Charleston. And I knew really at a very young age that I wanted to be 3 things when I grew up. I wanted to be, not necessarily in this order, I wanted to be a mom, a teacher, and an artist. And I've been so fortunate to get to do all 3 of those things. And I didn't know how long those seasons would last, you know. Of course, motherhood lasts forever. But anyway, I knew that I wanted to teach, but that was a season of my life. And I knew that I eventually wanted to do art full time. So anyway, yeah.
So how long were you teaching then? And were you teaching art?
Well, that's a no. I tied as much art to the curriculum as humanly possible without getting fired. I taught first grade in Charleston public schools, and then I taught first grade public school in Charlotte and then private school in Charlotte. And I'm still in touch with many of my students who are now grown and married and make me feel older than I am. But it was such a wonderful career, and I loved teaching, but I did try to do as much creative projects with even math, I mean curriculum, as I could. So I love that season, but I really didn't want to teach forever. But I'm really glad I did. I think that hindsight is such a beautiful thing when you look back and you can see. Yeah, I think like you can see God's hand in all the little steps to from the seed, and the planting to the growing and the reblooming, and the way that, like teaching for me was just a season, and then it was time to reharvest, and so um I don't regret any of that. I love those years, but I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and then I wanted to focus on art. So, yeah.
So goal number 2. So goal number 1, you started the teaching, check.
Yes.
Goal number 2, you became a mama,
Yes.
check. And like many of us do when we become moms, we do need to pivot because you would like to spend a little more time with your children. And so then did the art has always been a part of your life. Did it start to grow in that season of your life?
Yes, I actually taught children's art lessons while I was teaching first grade. So I taught at a wonderful place in Charlotte called the Drawing Room, which is not here anymore. And it was a wonderful place for me to have that creative outlet. And then I tutored children in the summer from our home, both with education, and I taught private children's art lessons from our house. So the art was even there while I was an educator. Um, and then I started a company when the kids were really young called the Creative Palette. And I hand
Okay.
painted, I did custom murals, mostly indoor. I never even considered outdoor murals. I painted baby nurseries, playrooms, bathrooms. I painted constellations on ceilings. Um, so I did a lot of custom painting. And then it was what I was already doing for my own children. I had two little boys at that time, and I was painting, for friends' gifts. I was painting bloomers and um, step stools. I had a woodworker who was making children's step stools and the small table and chair sets and coat racks. And I
Yes,
would
I love
paint these.
those.
I met
Yeah.
them at a farmer's market. So I would paint all these custom woodworking pieces and then linens. I painted baby pillows, all these things. And I used to do junior league pop up shops in Charlotte. And
Yeah.
that I look back on even that season, and it's just so interesting the people that I met who I still circle back with now. And anyway, so that was the custom painting business that allowed me to kind of get that creative fix, but stay home with the boys. And this is before I had twin girls after two boys.
Oh boy, oh boy.
And
And let
then
me just say
things
that
changed
I
Yeah.
did
again.
not think I would ever get dressed again or touch a paintbrush again, but I did.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 to 4. Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my
Wow. But
gosh.
now your two girls are really creative as well. But we'll talk about your
Yeah.
kids in,
We'll
in
get
a
there.
little
Yeah.
while. Yeah, we're keeping on track and going through your path. So
Okay.
I know you started multiple blessings at one point. Like,
Right.
how did you end up doing licensing and creating that brand? And when did that come about?
Yes, I love the way you're weaving this in. This is so interesting. So I had the creative palette, and it was like a wonderful. hobby and I was getting paid, but it was more filling that creative void that I felt like I just needed. And Lori, you
Love
and I have
that.
talked about
Yeah.
this before. Creativity is like
Yes.
necessary for me to live. Like it's like
Right.
breathing.
It's like
And
breathing.
Yep.
It is. That's
yes,
Yep.
exactly
it's just
it.
like I
Yes.
cannot imagine living without creativity. Anyway, so we had a miscarriage after William, our second son, and that really put a lot of things into perspective and the fragility of life and what do
Yeah.
you want to do with your life and things like that. And we really didn't feel complete and we really wanted to try for another child and had a lot of trouble and ended up doing kind of talking and thinking and praying about it. And our infertility doctor is a friend from church. And we decided after lots of testing to try one round of in vitro and not knowing what was going to happen. And if it didn't work, we were at peace with that and would move on. Anyway, fast forward, twin girls were born. Didn't think I would ever leave the house again, get dressed, paint, all that. And I started designing when I was pregnant with them their birth announcement. And of course, I was going to make it myself because that's what I do.
So of
And I
course,
just
Yeah.
had
yes.
so much fun designing that birth announcement. I was home a lot because I was on bed rest. And I decided to start painting some of the things that I had painted on the murals with Creative Palette on paper, and I designed 24 Christian greeting cards. Okay, so I matched
Uh,
my paintings,
Lovely.
watercolors with greeting cards. And Laura, you probably remember this, but way back then, the only place that you could buy greeting cards that had scripture on them, it was like a tacky photo of like a waterfall or a wagon wheel
yeah.
or something. It
Yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah.
Yes.
and so
Yeah.
there wasn't anything pretty with verses. And so I created that set of 24 cards to give to friends and to share with people and to give when a friend's baby was born. Had no idea that I was creating a brand, really did not. And a
Wow.
neighbor
Interesting.
saw those and she said, I really would like for you to come do a home show at my house. I'm launching these. Do you know Ann Nielsen, the Angels? She does these
Yeah. Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
she's a
Yeah.
Yes.
neighbor. Our kids are the same age. And she said, I'd really like for you to come bring this set of print some of these cards and do a little spin display and come sell them. I'm launching my angel paintings, and we literally launched the same day. And a
Wow.
woman was in
Wow.
the house and she said, I would like this brand in my store next week. And I was like, what brand?
Oh my gosh.
What brand?
I had
Yes,
just
I'm
put
a
like
brand. Oh
I had
no.
put like a watercolor thing that said multiple blessings because I felt like when you send a card with scripture, you multiply the blessing by sending it on. And I was having multiples. So, anyway, that's how
Hmm.
all that started.
Oh, wow. I love how that
Wow.
I didn't know the story about how that name ties into your daughters. I love
Well,
that.
I was, up a lot in the middle of the night going to the restroom.
Yes.
And that name really just came to me in the middle of the night one night about how I'm multiplying my family. And then when you send something that's life giving, you multiply the blessing by sharing it rather than keeping it. So that's how it
I
came about.
love that. I love that. So
I
you
love that.
you made a brand. You didn't know you were going to, but you made a brand.
Made a brand.
And
So
and a couple of babies at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Brand and
Yes.
Joe.
No small feat. Those 3 goals you had are now like coming true in
Right.
multiples.
Yes.
So were you able to get the cards into her store in a week?
Yes, they were my first store. Again, had no idea what I was doing, and they sold so well. I started having to find a local printer. The printer I used was wonderful. They don't exist anymore, but it grew so quickly that I had someone reach out about repping the stationery. I did go exhibit in Atlanta because there was so much interest in the cards. And when I went to exhibit in Atlanta, by then I had once I found the printer, I went from just offering the greeting cards to also having like magnetic notepads. And then I actually invented a couple of products. One was called Grace Bits, and it was like a metal, like a tin. People that hear this will remember these. They were really so sweet, but it's like a little metal tin that I sourced and designed the sticker label. And inside, they were larger than Post-it notes and they weren't sticky, but they were these little notes that you could just leave and bless on somebody's doorstep or in a
Oh, I love
lunchbox,
that.
or, like the little lunchbox notes, things like that. So you could just,
Yeah,
I kept them in my car and just like gave them to people. And so Grace Bits became a really neat thing. And I did a regular everyday version and then a Mother Bits, which were all mother child based. Um,
I love
anyway,
that. I
Oh,
love that. So you brought yourself to Atlanta. For those of you who maybe are out there and don't know this, there are different markets that stores go to actually purchase what they bring into their stores. And so designers, companies will bring their wares to Atlanta. So Caroline, the first time you went to Atlanta, you bought your own booth. Is that
I
correct?
did. I was in the temporaries. My sweet mom went with
Yeah.
me to
oh.
work, and
Were you in handmade? Were you in the handmade
I wasn't
section
in
or
the
in?
handmade. I was just in the temporaries. And gosh, if you never went to business school, this was like business 101. Like, I mean, you just had to learn it and figure it out. It
Yep.
was,
Yeah.
and I really loved those years. I wouldn't do it again now if you paid me, but I love, but I loved,
It's
it's
hard.
hard, very hard.
It's hard. But this is the thing that we get asked all the time too, but you are making an investment in yourself. You're making an investment in your brand. Because to go there, you must buy a booth, you must bring yourself there, you must
Pay for
but you all
electricity, blah, blah, blah.
pay for
Hmm.
pay for a lot of things, and to be there, and you're on for quite a bit. But my guess is, and I'm going to ask, and I'm asking a question that I don't know the answer to, did then one of the larger brands see you there, and is that how the licensing career started?
Actually, no.
No. Okay.
So I exhibited in Atlanta. I'm trying to remember. I may have this wrong. I think it was about 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And I also went to the National Stationery Show in New York City. And when I was at the National Stationery Show in New York City, there is a show called Surtex, which is
Certex.
in conjunction. So it's in the same building in the Javits Center. And I knew it was there, and I kind of knew what licensing was, but I was manufacturing. I was on the manufacturing and designing
Right.
side, and I had my own brand. And so it was later that I transitioned to Surtex and kind of got discovered pretty easily because my brand already existed.
Again, another
Okay.
parallel. I bet I was in a booth
No
in
way.
Certex probably around that same time you were on the manufacturing
I
side
mean, how fun
because
is that?
we showed at Certex for a few years. And that's how I ended up with my first agent and then ultimately my second agent, which we shared an agent, but that's a little bit
Oh,
still down the road in the story.
how
so,
crazy if we
so
were right down from each other and didn't know
Oh,
it.
I'm sure we probably passed each other. You
Mhm.
probably wandered into Certex and I probably bumped into you
I love
before we
it.
knew each
Isn't
other.
that funny?
So
So what
crazy.
happens at Surtex, ladies? Tell me what happens there.
Well, I can answer that.
Yes.
So it's called Surface and Textile. So artists are there to show their work and you can make connections for licensing deals, but there's also a section where people can buy out the artwork,
Mm-hmm.
do a full buyout. So licensing, you're getting paid on a percentage. When people do a buyout, like it might be a pattern or something, and the company will pay a fee, and then they'll have ownership of that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, a pattern or a piece of art or whatever. So we showed there several years, and you're making connections with manufacturers who will then put your art onto a variety of products.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So did
Interesting.
you ultimately show at Surtex then?
I did. And I was on my own, no agent. Just, I was like, I can do this. Anyway, talking about a financial commitment. I mean, when you exhibit at
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Surtex, it is such an investment, and you're just praying that it pays off. And we used to call it the promised land,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everyone would come by and promise you that they would be in touch about a big
Oh,
deal.
yeah.
And some of
It's
those
more
came to
about the
fruition.
hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have to hustle so much after the show. I think a lot of
Follow
people
up,
don't
follow up.
realize that. You think you're just going to go and the deals are made and you're done. Well, you make the connection, but then it's up to you to do the, calling and
Absolutely.
recalling and all the things.
I was really
I think
fortunate though to get to have a deal signed there, which was almost unheard of. So
Excellent.
well, I think that's important for folks to know too, because people think, oh, you just create art and the world comes to you. That is not it.
no,
You have to be in sales. You have to be in marketing. You have to your point, Caroline, you have to be in business. You have to really put yourself out there. And I've worked with a lot of different artists over the years, just talking to them. And I think they forget that part of it. Yes, you're creating beautiful work, but you've got to put yourself out there and make those connections too. It's super important, super, super important.
Yeah.
it,
If you want it to be a business. I mean,
If you want it to be a business.
if you're
Yeah,
not doing that, then it's basically a hobby, that's great too.
mhm.
But
that's totally fine.
yeah, so you're right. Like we made an investment like you did, and I laugh about the first time we went schlepping our, like we shipped everything to the hotel because we were worried about it getting lost at Javits, and
Mhm.
we're like finding a dolly to get our stuff up to the show, like the stuff that you do when you don't know what you're doing.
Oh,
You look back and you just kind of laugh
it's
because everybody starts somewhere and nothing's perfect, and you just kind of do it and plunge in, and then you learn.
absolutely. And I love that, I love those humble beginnings, because if you start with the fairy tale, you don't have the journey. And it's back to the reblooming and seeding and planting. It's like, I'm so grateful for the struggles and one thing I haven't said is, with printing on the manufacturing side, I over printed because you don't know which design is going to sell best. And I mean, I was
Right.
like over my skis, really. And we finally had to get a warehouse at the printer in Charlotte, because this was before I transitioned to licensing. And my husband was like, we had to like move product to sit down at the table. It was just like there was so much stuff. And anyway, my point is, I think it's important that the listeners know, like, I had overprinted. Um, I was not in smart financial shape, and doing the transitioning to licensing was a huge leap of faith to spend that money on Surtex, not knowing if I could clear out that debt from the printing. Um, but it did turn out to work out and be a huge blessing. And for me, I realized that I didn't love the manufacturing side. I just wanted, again, it was another reblooming of realizing I really just want to focus on the creative side, and not, you still have to do the business side, but I didn't want to be the manufacturer. And that is why
Right.
licensing was such a beautiful transition. It allowed me to focus on the creative and less on the business side. You still have to do some of that, but
Right.
I
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
wearing all the hats.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So you were not with an agent for several years. Like, how long were you on your own and navigating licensing before you actually were with our agent?
I started, I transitioned from the manufacturing to the licensing in 2007. And
Uh-huh.
that was without an agent. And then I didn't sign with an agent until December of 2012. So I was
Mm-hmm.
without an agent from, I'm really terrible with the timeline, but I think that's correct.
And ladies, why do you have an agent? Why have an agent versus not having an agent, Caroline?
I really loved both. I have to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a wonderful thing for me to start without an agent and figure out, can I do this on my own? I mean, maybe I'm a little bit of a control freak, but I also felt like I wanted to see if I'm such a people person and I love the connections. So I felt like if I was going to have a deal happen in a partnership with a manufacturer, I wanted to know the heart and hands behind it. And so for me, it was important to start without an agent. And maybe that was a little bit, I don't know, cocky of thinking I could do it all myself. So I did enjoy that. And I got to know so many wonderful people who, and I knew their grandchildren's names and their kids' names and like where they went to college. And I would email them and check up on them. And I love that part. It's a lot of work to do that. But if you care about people, then you do that. Um, but I was working with, I don't know, maybe six or so companies. And it was a lot to manage. And I had four children. So I think about the time that I started to feel overwhelmed, um, I was approached about the agent situation. And initially it was like, I got this. And I had a conversation with my husband. He was like, you need some help. This is a good thing. So, anyway,
Yeah.
that turned out to be a wonderful yes, also. And I loved working with them. I was with them 10 years with Courtney Davis, loved all of that journey. And, I was not, certainly not the number one by any stretch of the imagination, licensed artist with them, but I grew a lot. I learned a lot. I started to understand collections and motifs, which we can explain what that is. Do you want us to, for the listener? Lori, I'm going to let you do
Sure.
that.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, basically, when you create for licensing, you have to provide the manufacturer with enough that they can work with. So, typically, my formula by being with Courtney Davis also is we would do like maybe 4 to 6 main images and then do a series of complementary patterns and maybe provide text or lettering or all, like basically you're giving the manufacturer a kit of parts that then they can use to put on a variety of products.
Right. Yes.
Interesting. And it seems too each step of the way, Caroline, that you're wanting as you grow, you're still making decisions that bring you back to your love, which is to be creative. Because each time you grow and each time you get bigger, that requires more of the business side of it or more challenges. And so having an agent lets them do some of that and lets you really focus on the creative part
Yes,
that
the
you
other thing that I
love.
would say I'm trying to put my hat on as a listener. And one of the things that I
Yeah.
think people don't know is that one of the blessings of working with an agent is they have relationships with manufacturers who you may never
Yes.
know about on your own. And they have relationships with some manufacturers who won't work with anybody who doesn't have representation. And
Right.
so they took me from, I don't know, 6 or 7 companies I was working with to like, you know, many. And so
Yeah.
Right.
that that was something that I could not have done on my own, didn't want to. And I could have just stayed in that bubble of working with a handful. But it really opened my eyes to just the world of, when you walk into a store, a retail store, and you see beautiful colors and patterns and art on products, someone made that. I mean, somebody
Yeah.
created it either by hand or digitally, or, put it into a repeat, somebody made it. It was either done in house or by an artist. And, art just makes the world more beautiful, and it's everywhere you look.
It sure is. And go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I was just going to maybe move us on to your next phase
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I know that you're doing all kinds of really exciting things, and we both decided to leave our agent. Like I think I was maybe a couple years before you,
Mm-hmm.
and I think both of us had similar reasons where there were just things that were calling us in our hearts to maybe teach and travel and just do other things other than licensing. So, can you talk a little bit about that
Yes.
next part of your journey?
Yes. I mean, it was really hard when I made that decision, and they came to Charlotte, and I cried like a baby. And it was nothing personal. They were amazing. I just was feeling this pull, this change of season. Part of it was, I was about to be, and all of the children were leaving the nest. And for so many decades, we've been traveling for our kids' sports, and I want to see the world. And I loved teaching. I'm capable of teaching. And so I was feeling called to do more heart centered work. And again, all of what we're talking about today is when you pivot and rebloom and grow and change. I think the most important thing is like trying to get back to what makes you come alive, right? And so I was
Absolutely.
starting to kind of dread the deadlines, and I was starting to kind of resent some of the commitments. And I was like, I just want to paint what I want to paint, and I want to
Oh
travel,
my
and I want to
gosh.
teach. And so
Yep.
it was a little bit of that. And I'm so fortunate I'm at that stage of life where I could make that change. Um,
Right.
and so anyway, they were handled it so well. We're still in touch. It's all great. So do you want me to talk about what I am doing now?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Share.
Well,
What you're doing now, what you're dreaming about, all of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I do feel like, again, Lori and I have this just shared joy of life, and
Similar. Yeah.
uh, we call ourselves creative chameleons, because we just
Yeah.
like all the
Yep.
stuff. But I right now I'm focused on still a lot of things, but one thing that I really love doing is I love teaching workshops, private group workshops in my studio here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, I'm in a historic 102-year-old building with 30 artists in it, and it's called Dilworth Artisan Station, and it is a fantastic place. And for anybody who's listening, please come see us. It is just a very cool creative hub. We have a sculptor, we have many, many fine artists, painters, we have photographers, architect firm, a jewelry welder. Anyway, it's amazing. And so I just moved to a larger studio space here, and I have capacity to seat 20 people in workshops. Typically, they're 6 to 15 or so, but I can seat up to 20. Um, and I love, love, love having people here. Most of the women that I teach, it's adult women. However, I do some corporate groups, so team building, so I can do co-ed workshops, and I love that. I just did a group of middle school girls from a church. I will do kids and birthday parties, but I really prefer teaching the adults, which is kind of funny since I was a first grade teacher. But
I
I,
was wondering about
yeah,
that.
I will
Yeah.
do it. I will do it, and I do enjoy it. It's just not the most popular age group to sign up. Um, but anyway, I love encouraging young people to be creative. So anyway, so I'm doing the workshops. I also have um, other artists and counselors and people renting my studio space to teach their own workshops, seminars, and some artists here don't have space this big, and or they just don't, they don't want to pay rent all year. And so I'm trying to allow some other people to come use this space on occasion. So that's another thing. And then, can I tell you one more thing?
Yeah,
Yes,
So I
all of
haven't
it.
announced this yet,
all
but
of it.
I am going to be announcing it soon. Is one of the things that I really want to offer is, and it's probably only going to be once a month, but it's going to be an open studio create with Caroline, and you come bring your own art supplies and your own projects, and you just come, and we have a block of a few hours where you bring your coffee, and you have and you bring your own project, and we're just at a table, and I'm here to give feedback and conversation, but I'm not teaching, and it's not a workshop. It's just a creative time with Caroline. And so that's going to be probably starting probably in January, and the winter, I'll have coffee and cider here, and it'll be open to anybody who wants to come and bring their own project. So that'll be fun.
Oh, fun. That reminds me of our artist gatherings.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I taught at a place called Richwood on the River. I have been, and I decided I love the space so much, but I don't really get to create much when I'm teaching there. So I do the same thing. I invite artists and we just bring what we want. And both of you were at the most recent one.
It was
So
awesome.
it's so
It
much
was
fun.
awesome. Yes.
It's fun to just be with kindred spirits. I love teaching. I love that, but it's also really great just to be surrounded with creative kindreds and working on whatever each of you want to be working on, whatever fulfills you.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and Urban Stems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention Rebloom. And a huge thanks to Urban Stems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Rebloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today. I think it's so cool, Caroline, because I think too, when I'm in my own space, and I would bet for you both too, it's nice, but we love the connection. I love to chat with other people and just to have a visit. And it doesn't have to be, to your point, you don't necessarily need the instruction. You just want to have a nice cup of coffee and chat with someone and see what they're doing and be inspired by what
And
they're doing.
learn
What a
from one
brilliant
another.
fun.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Your extroversion is showing there. It's funny
Yes.
because at Richwood, like I'm an introvert. So even though I'm around a group of people, most of the time I had my head down and was just working on my birds or work. And Jamie's flitting around.
Floating around.
And Carolyn's flitting there talking to everybody. And
Yeah.
We need our people. And I love to be alone. I do, but I think that there's something so special about connecting with other people through teaching, through just gatherings. I think that that's so important. And I think that's the thing that I love that, Caroline, in your journey. But it's so interesting as you've pivoted, you've kept that consistency of art and creativity, but also connections throughout each choice that you've made.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you were working with the licensing agency or doing it on your own. And what people are hearing, I think, is that you had relationships with people,
Mm.
and the relationships make the connections, and the connections help us to grow. And that is so beautiful about your journey.
Yeah. So sometimes on the podcast, we have people who have made like really major shifts, like from
Yeah.
neuroscientists to making ginger beer or
Mm-hmm.
stock exchange to making bourbon. So, but not everyone makes that extreme of a pivot. But I feel like you always had the same seeds from when you were young, but you have made little tweaks along the way,
Mm-hmm.
always kind of gearing yourself or heading yourself towards something that felt even better at that season of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You listen to your heart, listen to your
Yeah.
beautiful heart.
I agree with that. And, I'm still doing it. It's like even in the last week, some decisions and changes. And I think, it's just important to keep listening and shifting and pivoting. And certainly COVID taught us that. I mean, we had to. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw that you're doing something creative with your daughters, which is another parallel because I do
yes,
things with Kenzie all the time.
yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So my twin girls are sophomores in college. And it's so funny when all four of our kids were young, they were surrounded by this mom who was the artist who had, I always say I'm addicted to art supplies, which is, could be worse, right? And anyway, they were always surrounded by art supplies and just did not really have an interest in it when they were younger, probably because it was everywhere. And really now all four of them are incredibly creative, but in very, very, very different ways. Walker designs golf courses and does creative digital golf design and documentary
Oh,
work.
wow.
And William used to design athletic sneaker drawings and did a little internship with Nike. And he's really creative and has designed band posters in college. And then, but my girls, Charlotte is a student athlete, but she has taught herself how to do hand lettering. And it is fantastic. She taught adult courses over Zoom during COVID. She has taught
Wow.
workshops in my studio. And then anyway, so we are about to do, and then I'll tell you, Sarah Grace is a fashion textile designer at NC State, and she is incredibly creative. But all of this is just so interesting. She did not start sewing until the beginning of COVID. So,
Wow.
and got into
Wow.
this program. But anyway, what we are doing is we decided this summer to launch a collection, which is launching this week, called the Moda Collection, Mother Daughter, kind of like
Oh,
MoMA in New York, but Moda.
love it.
And Charlotte named it, which I love. And we just thought it would be fun to do a collaborative project together. And so we have merged some of my watercolor paintings with Charlotte's lettering. And we had such a great time figuring out, the colors and the theme and the wording. And so it's beautiful. They turned out great. And some of those originals will be sold this Friday at our gallery crawl. And then digitally they've been scanned and will be on products which will be sold exclusively online on journals and Christmas ornaments and things like that. And so they are that will come out probably next week. They'll be available online. And then my other daughter, Sarah Grace, we bought a huge bolt of duck canvas, and she sewed these huge tote bags with pockets, and I have hand painted all of them.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
fun to have. That won't be a digital product, but it's a great way for them to make a little money, understand how to be an entrepreneur, and just fun to watch my girls use their talents.
Oh my gosh, I can relate.
That is phenomenal. And how interesting, too, Caroline, that you've come back to your manufacturing
I
days.
know.
We wonder. I picked up on that, but I thought, you know what? But you now know, because of your experience way back when with the printing and the greeting cards,
hmm
about quantities and how to do it, and even your licensing work and all of that. You've built on all of that experience. But what a beautiful gift to give to your
You're
daughters.
so sweet.
This is
However,
amazing.
the products
Oh,
online are I'm not print they're print on demand, so I will not carry
which
the
is
inventory.
new.
Yeah, which is a
Yes,
beautiful thing.
which is
And
a very beautiful thing. And that's been a shift in the industry. So you're
Right,
not locked into that. And
right,
but what a beautiful thing to both emulate that creativity for your girls, but now to bring them back into it. What a gift. What
right.
a huge gift. Oh,
and
It's
that's
it's
neat.
the
Isn't
best
it? I love
to
what you're doing with Kinsey.
collaborate.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's just
mean, we're
precious.
teaching together and we work together because she licenses art. And I love like going to the gift show and being in a meeting with one of our manufacturers and just I can sit back and she like takes over the meeting and
Right.
just to watch her, take notes and be articulate. And I don't know, there's nothing more gratifying than watching our children flourish and
so
just,
true.
yeah,
Absolutely
So
it's,
agree.
very, very true.
And they are
S-
very happy for me too. Like I've seen it with them that they're so thrilled to see me traveling outside of their sports now and leading domestic and international retreats and doing all
right.
these things. So it's really
Right.
sweet.
Will they come with you? Because Kenzie's come to a few of mine.
They can't right now because of
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
However,
yeah.
Sarah Grace has applied to a textile fashion thing in London next summer, so maybe I can
Ooh.
make something
Maybe.
happen over
Ooh.
there. So we'll see.
That's amazing.
And that's also taken you right back to your teaching too, because you're teaching, as you said, internationally, and your travel teaching, which is also very parallel to Lori,
Yeah.
Yep.
and and it's this new season of your life. And I think that's the thing for listeners is that we think, oh, this is what I have to do. And okay, well, maybe you have the time or the ability or the energy or any of it at a certain phase, but things do shift and you have to shift with those seasons. But yet there's always new opportunities. And
Amen.
so, yeah, you just got back from Italy. I
Yeah.
mean, that looked amazing,
I
amazing.
know. Oh my
It was
gosh.
great. We had 12 women on the Amalfi Coast, and I have a friend who's a culinary tour. He owns a culinary tour company, so I've taught in Tuscany with him before, and then this was Amalfi Coast. But I really, there's just something so amazing about travel, and I'm not. I I feel kind of bad sometimes saying this is only for women. I mean, the spouses can come on the front or back end of the trip, but there's something magic when women gather. And I know
Mm,
Lori, you all agree with me on this, but for me, I love like unleashing the artist within. And I love
Mm-hmm.
helping women discover or rediscover that little girl inside who
Mm-hmm.
used to love art. And we all, when I tell my students this all the time, when you were 4, 5, 6, trust me, you thought that you were the best artist on the entire
Oh
planet
yeah.
yes.
until
Oh
someone
yeah.
told you you weren't. And it was either yourself, a friend, a parent, a teacher, somebody, and they squashed that creativity. And it's just so fun to see people play again.
Yeah.
So interesting because I was just thinking about this morning. Our two grandsons, both of them are very creative, but Nash, the older one, he has started to notice that his younger brother, who is Holden, he's very passionate about art and wants to do it all the time. Nash has already told himself that Holden is the artist. So we just had them here this weekend and we got them both pumpkins and we were going to paint them. And Nash is all about sports now. And, Holden's sitting there painting his pumpkin while Nash is running around our basement throwing balls and stuff. But part of it, I think it is because he already thinks, well, I'm not the artist. Holden's
Right.
the artist. And
Mm.
it makes me sad because, I had all these memories of creating with him and I think it's a really good therapeutic thing for young people and older people to spend time creating.
Mm-hmm.
He's very, very active, and he could focus when he was making art. So I was just thinking this morning, I'm like, I'm going to enforce that a little more on him
I love
and
Yeah.
that.
bring him back to that, because I know he loved it, and something's happened where he's disconnecting, and I don't like it.
Yeah. And you're right, you're both right, because it's somebody does tell you no, and it's so interesting that we listen to that voice. And we've had many of our other guests say the same thing. Someone said, no, you have to go do a career that makes money, or no, you can't. And that small little no is the voice that you listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a blessing, and it's so amazing when people shut that voice down and
Right.
let the creativity just fly and just
Right.
soar. Caroline, you are incredible. Now, I also want to let our listeners know you're doing some pretty amazing travel teaching. Certainly, they can come see you in Charlotte. Anybody who's listening from the Charlotte area, but you're doing some really cool things in 2025 too.
Yeah, so I'll be teaching in France in the spring with UpTruck in the Loire Valley. And that one is full. I feel bad that, well, all of the retreats in 2025 are full, other than I believe there's some spaces in Connecticut at where Lori just taught at the Connecticut River Valley Inn in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I do believe we have some spaces for that. And I'm really looking
Awesome.
forward
We'll
to
put a
being
link up
there.
for that. We'll put a link up for
Great,
that. So if
great.
anybody wants to go
Yeah,
visit with Caroline there.
I would love that one. Is called Inspired by Nature. And again, just back
Oh,
to, you know, I'm singing you love those, Jamie, flowers
I
and,
do.
and leaves and all of that. So there's just so much art in nature. So
Oh,
that'll
yeah,
be a
totally.
wonderful retreat. But anyway, yes, I'm teaching in France. Canada, which is where I did a residency and lived for a month. It's just above Maine in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. And that one is full also. I couldn't believe that one filled in less than 24 hours, which
Wow.
is great. But I will be offering some other retreats. It's just hard to do too many international in a
Yeah,
year. And
yeah,
we're
I hear
still
you.
traveling
Yeah.
for college sports and things. So I'm trying to be really mindful of time and family and leaving. Um, but I definitely am always open to having workshops and events in Charlotte. And speaking of Jamie,
Speaking of,
Jamie,
yes.
Jamie is going to be coming next spring. We will announce the details soon, but we are going to be doing
Yeah.
a really neat workshop, 2-day workshop in Charlotte that is focused on flowers and capturing and creating. So we'll give you details about that. And then Lori and I have been talking for probably 2 years about teaching together somewhere. So stay tuned because we are working on it.
We'll have to figure it out. We text each other. What about going here? What about going
I
there?
mean,
And now you have
it,
that beautiful space in
I
Charlotte, and I
know.
have friends there. I'm like, maybe I'll just come to you.
Yeah, so we
It's got to happen.
we will make it work. We are definitely kindred spirits.
Yes, we
You
are,
are.
for
Well, I
sure.
think we all are kindred spirits. And Caroline, you are incredible. We ask our guests sometimes if there's just a little piece of advice that has been given to you or you would like to share that you feel is really helpful
Hmm.
to inspire them.
Well, I do creative coaching for women. Um,
Mhm.
in person and online. And one of the things that I share a lot um, with them, especially women who are trying to make art a career, but even if you're not, this is just good for any listener. Um, and we've told our kids this from a very early age. If you can discern your gifts and talents, your God given gifts and talents, whether you're trying to do that at a young age or whether you're older and you're trying to rediscover your current gifts and talents, if you can really zone in on those, and if you want to make those passions and your gifts and talents a career, then you will never dread Monday because you will love what you do when you wake up. And I absolutely jump out of bed with joy most mornings because I'm so grateful to do what I love every day, and I don't view it as work. I would do it for free. And when you feel that way, and it's hard, like not everybody can say that, and I know that I'm really fortunate to be able to say that. But I think no matter what your career is or what you, sometimes it's thinking about the things you're not good at and ruling those out that helps you discern what you should be pushing yourself toward. So I hope that helps and I hope that makes sense. But discerning because I believe everyone was created on a purpose, with a purpose, and for a purpose. And if you can figure out your purpose and merge it with your passion, then there you go.
That is beautiful. And what a
Perfect.
perfect way to end. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. You're incredible. I hope everyone has a chance to meet you one day because you are just joy.
I
You are
love
just
y'all
pure
both,
joy.
and I'm hugging you through the
Oh,
computer.
Yeah, virtual
big hug.
hugs.
Big
Yeah.
hugs. Thank you so much.
And thank
You're
you
the
to
Thanks for
best.
joining
everybody
us.
for listening.
Yeah,
Come
well,
see
you
me in
brought some
Charlotte.
great seeds. You shared some great stuff.
Okay,
Super.
thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
So I think I need to have the phrase "Never Dread Monday" on a T-shirt,
I
or
think,
maybe "Purpose plus Passion." And I'm thinking about some conversations I want to have with some people in my family about surrounding this idea of really, really thinking about your God given talents and really thinking
yeah,
about what lights you up and trying your very best to bring that into your life, whether it's your full time career or whether it's, stealing 15 minutes every other day doing something that just maybe it's cooking, maybe it's, taking a walk and appreciating nature, anything that you can
anything.
just light yourself up.
Absolutely anything. And, I love that Caroline started as a child with the crayon, but never let go of the art. That was the thing that lit her up. That was the passion. And yes, she had goals, but even as she was going throughout her career, holding on to that, holding on to the creativity, holding on to her joy. And it's okay to say no or let go of the stuff that, quite frankly, is a little annoying. If you don't like accounting, let it go. If you don't like busy work, let it go. Because if you are holding on to that, it's taking away from the thing that really does fill your heart. And so at each pivot point she made, she grew, but then also grew and realized she needed to scale back on certain things so she could keep that joy and passion growing. It was
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah, I think it's a really great skill to recognize when it's time to make a change. And change is not easy. It's not an easy thing, but if you don't change at the right times when things are weighing you down, you'll just keep getting more and more weighed down. And that leads to mental health issues and depression and sadness. And so I think change is hard, but sometimes change is necessary to get you to a place that makes you really happy.
It is, and change is good, and you close one door and beautiful doors open, and you have to trust in your heart that the closing of one door will lead to something beautiful on the other side. And if you believe that, then I think you have the courage to do it, and you can make it happen. Amen. Well, thank you, everyone. Peace, love, and Rebloom. Until we meet again.
Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of Rebloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.